Welcome to episode number 23 of Talking Mopars and the first edition of Direct Connections. My guests for today are Chuck and Matt McMurray, the founders and brains behind ReadyChassis.shop and HemiPages.com. So without further ado, if you are a Mopar enthusiast, then you are in the right place. Don't go anywhere. You're tuned into the best Mopar enthusiast-driven podcast on planet Earth. And I'm your host, Chris Albrecht, better known as the Mopar Hunter, and this is Talking Mopars Direct Connections.
You're listening to Talking Mopars with the Mopar Hunter, your direct connection to all things Mopar.
All right. Introducing my guests for the first edition of Direct Connections, Chuck McMurray and his son, Matthew McMurray. Guys, how are you doing?
Good. And happy Easter, by the way.
Yeah, happy Easter to you guys, too. Before we get into your current Mopar endeavors, let's rewind time a little bit. And Chuck, let's start with you. What got you into Mopars?
So it's an interesting thing. There was a 1988 Hot Rod magazine, maybe it was Carcraft, and they had the top 10 fastest cars of all time. And they were measuring the cars in, various road courses and quarter miles and things like that. And so, at the age of 13, I was really into like Lamborghini, Countach, and Ferraris, didn't know anything about cars. And the car that owned the quarter mile for that particular top 10 that they did was a 62 Max Wedge Dart, right? Which is the opposite looking of a Lamborghini Countach. And I was just completely floored that something that was that ugly could be that fast. And so that kind of caught my eye. And from then on, I just started, picking up reading magazines and kind of following the Mopar story. And of course, once you get into the 426 Hemi content and you realize how many engines they own in, straight line racing, they've been pretty much the dominant force when it comes to, top fuel and those types of engines and things. And so I stuck with it and then got into my own cars. When I was 14, my dad let me buy a 74 Valiant with $300 out of a Walgreens parking lot in Chicago. Knew nothing about it, tore the slant six out and learned the hard way. And after that, got into a 66 Coronet. And from then on, it became pretty natural to me to be able to fix stuff. I was always kind of good with my hands and just fell in love with the brand, which was weird because in the early 90s, Mopar didn't have nearly what they have today or what they had in the late 60s. So
Sure.
It was definitely a hard time to be the underdog, so to speak.
Definitely. Matthew, what about you? Obviously, your dad had to have some sort of influence on you and your love of Mopar. So go ahead and tell your side of the story.
Yeah, so I've actually got two different peaks because I'm interested in both old Mopars and young Mopar and the new generation Mopars, the Gen 3 Hemi stuff. And actually, both of them have to do directly with the cars that he's bought. So back when I was 11, 12 years old, my dad decides to tell me, hey, we're going up to Wisconsin and we're going to buy a $1,200 1966 Dodge Coronet.
The roadkill
influence car, which actually did have a pretty big influence, and I can't leave that part out because I started watching roadkill with him, and that definitely sparked the interest in him to want to go and buy this car. So it's kind of a whole cycle. We started with them, and so went up to Wisconsin. We bought this car and drove it 6 hours home.
Wow!
And it was incredible. That car was.
We almost didn't make it.
We almost didn't make it, but we ended up getting home all right, and we spent 6 months with that car before we decided to trade it out for our newest 1973 Dodge Coronet, which we still have today. But then, so that's my interest in old Mopars. That's how it all started. And now to this day, I'm actually driving a 1977 Plymouth Volare.
Nice.
Which we bought on St. Patty's Day this year.
A green car on St. Patty's Day.
Green car. And right around the same time, my dad decides to get a 2010 Dodge Challenger RT. And I'll be honest, at first I was not a big fan of it. I was kind of like, this is weird. This is a new car. He's always had old cars around. And then we decided to take it out to Route 66 Raceway out here in Joliet. And we took it down the track. And for some reason, just seeing the car out on the track, comparing it to other cars, knowing my dad was out there, I was like, this is so awesome. Just the track experience, everything about it. And from pretty much that moment on, just seeing the car go down the track, just during a test and tune, I was into it. It was awesome.
Was that your first time at the drag strip?
No, I've been going to the drag strip since I was like three
I dragged him out. Yeah. Every year, summer and
So,
spring, we would go down there and go to the NMCA events, and took him to the Mopar shows when he was so young that the only thing he wanted to do was buy Matchbox cars and get free ice cream. But I think the influence of seeing enough of it, he started to kind of pick up the hobby and took to it pretty naturally.
Right on, right on. Well, now that we have a little bit of your background, let me ask you a couple questions before we get into your businesses.
Sure.
What do you guys think about the current Mopar marketplace as far as where pricing is for not only project Mopars that are classics, but also fully restored Mopars? How do you guys feel about that?
It's interesting because, we've done work for retailers in the automotive market. We've kind of followed where the investment Mopar level cars have gone since, after the economy crash in 2009. And it really got inflated, right? It was almost frightening to think that if you wanted to go out and get a 444 barrel automatic B body, that you're going to be spending at least $40,000 for something.
Yeah.
So, that was crazy. But I am happy that the market has recognized that these cars are important enough to put the money into them and to take care of them, because so many of them just got, left out in the weeds and crushed and everything else. So it's been interesting to see kind of how that's continued to change over time. But what I found really interesting is where, the price of the aftermarket has gone. It's actually a lot cheaper now than it was so many years ago to be able to build engines and get parts. There's, we went to SEMA last fall, and, you go to the Diamond piston booth, and there's 4 different piston types just for the 400, low deck engines. I mean, that was stuff we dreamt of 25 years ago. So I think that's great. And the new stuff has certainly respawned a generation in the market. It's challenging that Hellcats are, to get into one now, if you were going to get into a used one, you're probably looking at 45,000. But the Demons, they're still at that inflated price. The Red Eyes, even with all the incentives, you're still looking at a $70,000, $80,000 car, but you're also buying a 10-second turnkey, Corvette killer. So I guess that does make sense. But it's a really exciting time, and I think it has never been as good to be a Mopar guy as it is, at least in the last couple of years, in my personal opinion.
I definitely agree. What about you, Matthew? What do you think about these prices? Are they crazy or what?
For me, definitely, because I can barely afford anything that any of these cars. I see them. I'll go on Facebook Marketplace a lot just to dream. I'll look at E-bodies, I'll look at B-body, old Chargers and stuff, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, if it weren't for the fact that he was into the stuff, I would just continue to dream.
Yeah.
And but I think that it's where it's at is pretty good, because if you look at the comparison of other domestic vehicles, new prices, used prices, they're pretty expensive. And I mean, it's when you're in the restoration market alone, you're looking at expensive prices anyways. When you're going to get into a project, you're going to be spending money. But I would definitely say that for where things are and where the economy is, I think that the prices are very reasonable. And I mean,
for some cars,
cars, and I feel like the Demon, the inflation should go down. I'm hoping it goes down, because it's an incredible car, but it's
not
definitely
for $130,000.
not for 100, right?
Yeah.
So
Now, let me ask you both this. Do you think that, because I've been seeing almost a divide between modern Mopar enthusiasts and the old school guys, for lack of a better term, do you think it takes a little bit of fun out of the equation when you go out and buy, say, a Demon or even a Hellcat or a Hellcat Red Eye, because they're already fast out of the box? So it's like, you dump, we'll say 50,000 or 100,000 plus on a car, unless your pockets are really deep. I mean, how much modification are you really going to do? How much fun are you really going to have aside from just turning the key and going? Do you think that those cars take the fun out of it?
It's funny you say that, because we've really invested in both old and new, and having a 2014 SRT8 that ran, he got an 1193 out of it with soft tires, out of the box, no mods. And it was neat because, out of the box, you can go that fast. But at the same time, there really wasn't a lot that you could touch easily. If you're going to make one modification, you need at least a tune. And with a tune and a few modifications, if you put the car in the 11s, then you need to start tracing, drive line, making those improvements. And so it's really never just a bolt on. It's a few $1,000. And so, I'd say that it's reinvigorated the market, but I would agree that there seems to be kind of a divide between the folks that did restoration and were part of this for 30 or 40 years and what the new market has done. But in some ways, it has kind of taken the fun out of, I think, when you can get in a red eye and run 10 teens or high nines, to do that in an A body would require a lot more.
Yeah.
So it makes it easier if you are not mechanically inclined and you don't have
Sure.
tools. But at the same time, it has reset the bar for what is a fast car. So it's interesting, right? But they're also 4,600 pounds. So the safety equipment. My concern with a lot of those cars is what happens if you do have something happen at the top end. I mean, a 4,600 pound car versus a 2,800 pound car is a lot more inertia. Right?
Yeah.
More to start.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure the insurance companies don't really want to know that you're out there banging them up on the track either. That's always
Right,
that would be an interesting conversation with, the Geico lizard.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
All right. Now, one more question before we get into your Mopar business endeavors. What are your guys' favorite TV or movie Mopars?
I'm sure you have your own. I'd have to say the white Challenger of
Vanishing Point.
Vanishing Point. Thank you. The
Kowalski?
Vanishing Point.
Okay. Okay,
that'd
fair
have to
enough.
be my favorite.
Matthew, what about you?
Oh man, it's okay. If I have to choose from a '68 Charger between the Bullet car and then the General Lee, and Fast and Furious, I forgot about that one too. I'd have to say the General Lee, just knowing the story behind the fact that they had so many of those cars produced and seeing those lots where they had 20 of them just on back lot, and knowing that they crashed them in almost every episode and in the movie and stuff. So, I mean, I just think that the General Lee is probably one of the coolest things that they ever made.
Absolutely. There's a lot of anger around Dukes of Hazzard because they wreck so many of them. And I'm like, well, I don't know how I really feel about all of it.
Especially 68 Chargers.
Right.
Yeah.
Now those are some of the most expensive. I don't know. Were they 68s or 69s?
They're 69s.
69. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, because they have the split in the front.
Yeah.
So now it's like they're so hard to find, and they were just wrecking them back then. That how much of an impact? A lot of people have asked this question: how much of an impact has the Dukes of Hazzard actually had on the Charger marketplace? As far as how many are available and what you can get and all that. So that's always been an interesting topic for me, and I'm actually glad that you guys both had different choices for those, because on Talking Mopars, I have a segment called High Performance Parts where I pick a car just randomly, a Mopar from TV or movie history. So I thought it would be interesting to get your guys' take and see what you guys would choose. So very cool.
Yeah,
I like that.
That's fun.
All right, let's get into ReadyChassis. Why don't you tell us a little bit about ReadyChassis?
Sure. So ReadyChassis has been an idea that I've had probably since my late 20s. I always thought it was really difficult to try to get a good certified race car that also, could be considered by Mopar purists to be something that they'd respect. I mean, anybody can cut up a car and turn it into a chassis door car, but to, challenge how you run different rear suspensions and things like that, I always thought that it could be done better. And I've seen so many, for lack of a better word, really junk race cars built and raced and in some cases crashed, that I always thought it would be a neat idea is if somebody would produce something that served the street strip market. And used to build a lot of those cars when I had a shop in the early 2000s. And I sold many of them, but never really did a lot of the heavy, tube chassis conversion work. I kept my cars stock floor pan, stock steering locations and things like that. And it kept the resale value up. So I've been at it for a while. Just wanted to be able to offer the market a volume where you don't have to spend $60,000, $70,000 to get into a car. And then once Matt got involved and we started looking at, would there be a demand for something like this? Think of the choices you've got. Drag pack, too expensive for most people. Hellcat Red Eye, that car comes with a warranty and it's turnkey for at least 5 years of your life, unless you've got the extra money to spend. But there doesn't seem to be an intermediate play. And so that's where we really felt like we could fill the market with something that people could get into for a reasonable price, but still get a high quality product.
So I could bring you, say, my 69 Dart and tell you what I wanted to do with it, and you guys could build me a certified race car?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really? Very cool.
Yeah. So, what we've been trying to do is isolate 2 or 3 different models where we can go out and collect cores, paint
Okay.
them in very popular colors, set them up so that they could accept 3 or 4 different types of suspension systems. So if you want to go road racing, there's a kit for that. If you want a ladder bar suspension, there's a kit for that. If you want to run a leaf spring car, there's a kit for that. And our cars come out of the box with, the underside already blasted and painted, the wheel wells undercoated. So really, you're not having to do the dirty work as much as you are just picking out all the fun parts and doing a lot of the bolt-ons, where a lot of the other NHRA certification welds and the other things are already done for you. So it really allows people that don't have the tools, and in some cases the time or even the expertise, to not have to deal with a chassis shop. They have a faster and easier way to be able to get into a ready to go rolling chassis, or a complete car, of course, if you want the drive train too.
Yeah, very cool. Now, from what I saw, it looked like you had 3 different stages of build. If I brought you my car, I could choose one of the 3 stages depending on how crazy I wanted to get, essentially. Is that
Correct?
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah. Anything from body in white to a fully, turnkey, ready to rock race car.
Very cool. Now, do you guys take care of the drivetrain and stuff too, the engine work and all that? So I could give you a check and I get a race car.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Very,
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
And what we try to do on the engine and drive line is we stick with a couple of different packages that we know perform well in our chassis. So right now we've probably got 3 to 4 different engine types that you can select from, and they kind of come the way that they are, right? They're like crate engines.
Okay.
Big block, small block, late gen Hemi is kind of those 3 choices. And then on the big block front, it's really, do you want a street strip car? Do you want a pure race car, or a pure, race piece? And so those are the choices. And so what we did in our research is we found that so many people had invested time and investment in the engine and transmission. They may have $20,000 in the drive line, and they don't even have nearly that much into the race car. And you get underneath it and it's dirty and the welds aren't good. The car doesn't certify. They've already got the investment in the drive line. They actually just need like a crate chassis. So that's kind of what we brought to market.
Very cool. Yeah, I've always had this crazy idea. I'm so obsessed with the Hurst Hemi darts that I always thought, especially with the modern Hemi coming out, I always thought, what if and I could be completely dumb for even thinking this, but I always thought it would be so interesting to set it up exactly how they were from 68, with the exception of a Gen 3 Hemi. I would love to see how the car would react to a modern power plant, but vintage suspension. Now, it could be a complete train wreck, who knows? But that's always been like, I don't know, it's like a little pipe dream of mine, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. The word that I heard, so folks that we've shared some of our prototypes with, I heard the word restoration used, and I like that because it's a restored car that's really set up for more of a street strip or a strip situation. So that's what we've deemed them, as restorations.
That's very
But
cool.
that name is already taken. There's a company in England that's doing those to Triumph TR6s and so forth. But yeah.
Okay. I like to refer to ratty Mopars that you go and just get safely running and driving. I call that a restoration.
I like that. I like that.
Fully restored. Cool. Well, so now I also thought I read something on ReadyChassis.com that said you could actually replicate an old super stock car. So if I wanted, like, say I'm a huge fan of Dandy Dick Landy and I wanted to replicate his 68 Charger, you could build me a replica?
That's actually one of the model variations that we're going to be doing. 67 to 69 Dart Barracuda. So the super stock cars will be replicating. We're going to have a lower dollar 73 to 76 Duster, because there's a lot of them, and the body style is still lightweight. And then we're going to have a drag pack type Challenger that'll be built off of an SXT chassis. But yeah, you'll be able to. So over time, we're going to release editions where if you want the real Dick Landy Dart, essentially without the Hemi, you can get the car. So if you've got a good running 440 and transmission, you can look and drive like that. If you want to put the super stock Hemi in there, that's obviously the increase in the investment, but you could get it that way. Absolutely.
Wow, very cool. You got me excited. I'm like, gosh, I might just have to, in a few years, if this podcast ever takes off, I might be calling you up and sending you something.
Sounds good. We'll hold a spot for you.
There you go.
Awesome. All right, let's move on to Hemi pages. Now, I don't know how many people, I don't know how much you've actually released to the world, how much information you've actually released so far. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about what Hemi pages is?
Sure. So Hemi Pages is, think of it easily as the Yelp or the Yellow Pages of the Mopar enthusiast community. There's a lot of options out there when you do your online research. Obviously, you can go to Google and you can start to search. But if you're going to start looking for Mopar-specific engine shops, transmission builders, people that sell parts, be it new or late model, it's actually difficult to find one place that has a lot of that. And what we found is in our research, when you go to Facebook groups, forum boards, is that most of the information doesn't necessarily come from certified shops. But the other thing is it comes with is a lot of commentary. There's not a lot of neutrality that comes with a Facebook group post. You get a lot of political talk, some negativity, lots of opinions. And so when you go out to just try to figure out, who polishes blower snouts for Hellcats, you end up getting 200 posts that are, just other people's opinions or, that kind of thing. So we sought to create neutrality, but really we wanted to provide an all-in-one place for people to go to be able to find businesses, services, classifieds. Of course, we'll have a forum board, but a place that I think will probably end up replacing something like Moparts or some of the other forum boards that are just out there and beginning to age. And it'll be a new place to find information.
Is Hemi pages solely for the modern Mopars, or are you guys going to integrate some sort of something to do with the classics as well? Are you going to? Is it specific to modern, or
we're gonna serve the whole market?
Okay.
We started out with, when we originally came out with the idea, we started a page called H3MI, thinking that the third gen Hemi would be where the information would be mostly desired. But as we started to look at a lot of the businesses that are out there, we felt like offering a larger, data set to a broader audience would make sense. So we renamed it Hemi Pages because, well, the Hemi is the engine of, the new powered vehicles, but it's also the legend of a lot of the older ones. So I'm hoping that branding isn't misleading, but it certainly is going to be a page that will serve both enthusiast markets. Perfect. Vintage and modern.
Awesome. Very cool. How would a business go about getting listed on Hemi pages?
Sure. Well, so in most of the research that we've done, we've populated what I think are most of the popular shops, engine shops, retailers. We have all of the Dodge dealers. We're going to be bringing to market very soon all of the AERA engine shop members. That's about 2,000 shops. But if somebody wanted to get their page listed, they can just sign up, get a business listing, even for free. And then, of course, if they want one that's fancier where they can do articles, gain classifieds, be able to share videos, there's a small increase in fee. And in many cases, if they're already listed, they can just claim the listing. So we do a little bit of work to make sure that when someone claims the listing, that they are in fact the business owner, because we don't want competitors claiming each other's listings. Yeah. So we do need a little bit of proof. But once that listing is claimed, the sky's the limit, and they can really use it any way that they want to.
Very, very cool. I'm sure that. How long has this been in development?
Well, so funny you ask. We actually started something called RPM X1000. So that's the symbol that you see on every tachometer in the late 90s, before the web became what it was. And the technology wasn't where my idea was. So we put the idea back in incubation. Around 2007, we tried to launch it again, and we called it Wrenchlist. And we found that mobile devices just weren't where we needed them to be. Now with mobile technology, everybody's carrying around a computer in their hand. If you have location services on your phone, you'll be able to go to Hemi pages and say, find me a car show, find me a dealership, find me somebody that's selling some parts. And by zip code, it would find, those nearest events, classifieds, businesses, dealerships. Even if you're broken down, you might be able to find a car, a tire dealer or something like that. So that was the concept. But it's been been in thought for 20 years. It's just that now the technology is there for us to realize the true vision of what we wanted to do.
Awesome. Now, this is kind of a question for both of you guys. How do you think that Hemi Pages is going to impact the Mopar community?
I think that the idea of actually creating Hemi Pages in the first place, we always were thinking about the modern Mopar stuff, but I think that when we realized that we wanted to be more of a general position for everything, I think we kind of came to the conclusion that we want to be, whether or not people want to pay for listings or whether or not it becomes a free thing and people want to advertise there, we want one way or another to actually end up being helpful, even if it's like the smallest thing, like getting businesses in one place, or maybe it's like helping people transfer from the complexity of Facebook into like a neutral area. And I think it's just about making it like a safer and more reliable environment for all the businesses that are involved in this community, whether they're new or old, to have a place where they can feel like they're going to benefit from it.
I would say from the survey that we did that I actually asked a question of a survey that we're going to release soon. Are you or would you find a directory, Yellow Pages, for the Mopar enthusiast community helpful? And about 90% of the people that took the survey said, I'm looking forward to it. The choices were also, I'm not interested at all. And we did get a few of those. So I think it really depends. I mean, you can solve your problem today through Google searches, through Facebook, through forum boards, through Racing Junk, through Mancini Racing, through books. The problem is there is no single one place to find a good body shop that Mopar guys would consider to be a place they'd get their car painted. It's really hard to find an engine shop that knows what, a 440 is to set up. And so I think the community will respond well, whether or not it's going to make us, a living, or it's going to make Matthew a living will be determined, I think, what we do with the content. But I do think that there's a lack of that centralization and neutrality in the market that I think we're going to bring to bear.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. The amount of questions I get from people from the Mopar Hunter page, I get messages all the time like, hey, where can I get this part, that part? Do you know of any good restoration shops? I am so happy to finally have one place to send these people because, I mean, there's so many, it's like, first, okay, where are you? Because like they ask you the question, where can I get this one trim piece? It's like, okay, where are you? Have you checked, Facebook groups, Craigslist, even eBay, and a lot of people I've found are just not that internet savvy. They don't, like me, if I need something, I will scour the internet. Every dark corner I can find, I'll find what I'm looking for. But some people are just not that resourceful. So I think Hemi Pages as a resource for people like that would be amazing. And, as far as the neutrality, I love that because, you ask a question on a Facebook thread and it is like, it's a zoo. It can get so crazy. And with so many different opinions, it would be nice to have, Hemi Pages as the resource that you can go to and feel like you're getting legitimate feedback, so that sure. I think that's amazing. And I don't think you guys will have any problems, keeping the ball rolling with, advertising. Because once you guys get that word out there, I can't imagine any Mopar related company not wanting to be listed on Hemi Pages because, from what you guys have told me so far, it sounds like it will be the go-to resource for anybody who has, restoring their car, paint, body work, engine work, machine work, things like that. I really think you guys are onto something cool. And Chuck, when you reached out to me to tell me about it, I was like, wow, I'm surprised nobody else has thought of that or nobody else has actually perfected it. I think a lot of people, that maybe have tried similar things, I think they didn't niche down. I think, they went too broad. I think had they niched down, I don't know of any LS resource, that's specifically for LS cars or anything like that. So just the fact that, and with how popular all that stuff is, it's going to be amazing to have a Mopar resource. So thank you guys for all your work that you're doing for the Mopar community. I really think that you guys are onto something, and I think it's going to be huge. So that's sure. I'm excited, and I'm not even, so I'm really looking forward to see, how it grows and how it evolves over time. And like I said, I can't imagine being a Mopar business owner and not wanting to be on Hemi Pages. So anything I can
Sure.
do to help you guys get the word out there, I'm more than willing to do, because I'm always about the Mopar community and helping, pull us all together. And I'm
Yeah.
really excited about this
Real
platform that you guys are
brotherhood.
creating. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Brotherhood. I like that.
Well, it's one of the reasons I actually reached out to you, because, we had thought about, from a community perspective, we're going to be advertising and giving people a place to go. But when it comes, for example, when we went to look for writers, I started reaching out to some of the freelancers that are out there, and I'm extending that hand saying, if you'd like to write for us, we'd like to be able to give you the chance to pick up publication space. But also, if you think of the problem that exists out there for a lot of the small businesses, they're not very good at, using the web or managing a lot of their own pages. There's, of course, shops that are very savvy, but a lot of smaller businesses that just don't have the time to manage a Wix or a WordPress site, or, let alone write content for it. So if we can bring writers together, we've got a podcast. This is why we wanted to create the relationship for you, because we thought, heck, if we could create a voice for the market, let's let Chris do that. And there's plenty of people to interview, and there's a lot of companies that want to get that PR. But the one thing I wanted to mention is, we're trying to create that community. So if there are people that want to write or they want to publish, we'd like to make that available to them. And if there's a way that they can make money through the site by becoming freelance writers for small businesses or writing articles for brands that have new parts, we'd really encourage that, because, again, I think the concept that they brought to market with the Hellcat and the brotherhood of Mopar, I think that's kind of where we'd like to see it go. The one thing I did want to mention on the neutrality piece of it too, we haven't ignored the fact that we know that user reviews are very important. So the site does have the ability for people to write user reviews. I'm going to try to tone down people that have a very negative review. I'd like them at least to keep it clean and professional. But the other thing that we've engineered into the technology is Yelp reviews. If you already have a Yelp ad at the address of your business, that already comes into Hemi pages. So you can see the Yelp review that already exists. We plan to do the same thing with Google reviews. So you should be able to go to one place and then see not only reviews that have been written on Hemi pages, but reviews that are generated by other sites for the same business, so long as obviously it's the same address.
There's multiple sources. I think another thing that actually would be important to point out is we did have the idea of the people who might not be so tech savvy, and even the people who don't want to go on their phone alone. And we just decided that maybe it would be a good idea to also have like print issues. So even if we do that on an annual basis for people who want to access the stuff, maybe through a book instead of online.
Hemi pages on paper.
Hemi pages as pages.
So we're going to be doing a printed edition where we plan, since Matthew has the time, he'll be driving out to the racetracks and setting up a small booth and handing out those editions.
Very cool.
To be able to get the word out there.
Yeah, that's a great idea too, man. I can imagine, Matthew. How excited are you?
I'm very excited.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm excited to be able to hit the road. I'm excited to be able to talk to the people one-on-one.
Absolutely.
It'll be exciting.
Yeah, he wanted to be a journalist, so this will be his chance to really open that book.
I really like the idea of you opening the door to freelance journalists in the automotive community, because there's so many. I mean, I have a couple names in my head right now that I'm going to have them reach out to you, because they're young. For me, I really like to promote the younger generations getting into Mopars, because I almost get scared when I go to these shows, because I look around and I see a lot of the owners of these cars are, getting up there in age, and I'm wondering what's going to happen to the community as a whole once the generation of people that were 16 when these cars came out, as far as the vintage Mopars go.
Sure.
I'm always curious to see where the whole community is going to go. And, once social media got big and I got to see how many young people are actually involved, I think that's really cool. Especially like on social media, you get a lot of people of influence. On Instagram, I'm really late to the Instagram game. I wish I had, given up on Facebook and just went straight Instagram, because Instagram filters out a lot of the garbage that you get from Facebook. But, I can't talk too bad about Facebook, because it helped me get to where I am now. If it wasn't for the Mopar Hunter, I wouldn't be doing this. So I'm excited with kids like Matthew that are getting involved in this. That's awesome. And I know a couple young riders that are probably going to be pretty stoked about this. I know they write for some other platforms that are out there, some popular platforms. But I can't imagine if you're freelance, you might as well get your work out as many places as you can. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you guys wanted to say about Ready Chassis, Hemi pages, or anything of the like?
I think the only thing we'd actually like to say to the market is for the businesses that might be listening, sign up, get a listing, or claim your listing, and at least be able to own that part of it, because you can get sales leads and customers reaching out to you. And with Ready Chassis, I just hope that we're able to provide a product that everybody's looking for and be able to continue the scale as a lot of these older car bodies are continuing to age, and they're either getting restored or in many cases they're getting cut up. So we definitely want to save enough of them so there's quantity out there. But what I would say is I'm very excited to see what we're going to be able to do with the LC chassis, which is the Challenger, because the used market is now creating enough volume that we'll be able to create accessibility to cars that are truly designed to be strip ready vehicles. Not to say that the Hellcat and the Demon aren't, because they definitely were designed for it. But cars that have axles, roll cages, and just all the components you need to be safe and go fast.
Very, very cool.
We're excited.
Awesome. Matthew, what about you?
I would say this is more from a Hemi Pages perspective. Just we have an official date on when we want to actually make ourselves known to the public, which is 4/26. Is kind of a toast to the culture.
Happy Hemi Day.
Happy Hemi Day.
Absolutely.
And of course, as soon as we can be making it out to like the modern street Hemi shootouts, we will be. So we want to have someone, as myself, I want to be on hand, be there for the people who have questions about it. And because I know that for some people, word of mouth and having that interaction is also very important. And so I just want to make sure that for those people who see the market in a different way, they all get a chance to get the experience of being a part of this culture and this brotherhood.
Awesome. Very cool. So for everybody listening, go to hemipages.com. And Chuck, I know you have a number to call. What's that number, buddy?
It's 833-GOT-H3MI or 833-GOT-HEMI.
Awesome. Very cool. Also, there's Ready Chassis. So that's ReadyChassis.com. You can go there to get up to speed on all your race car needs from Chuck and Matthew. Before we sign off, I do have a little segment of direct connections that I like to call the 6-pack. And it's just a speed round of I don't know if this makes any sense, but this or that question. So I want both of you guys to answer these. So it's really simple. It'll only take a couple minutes, and you can go in depth with your answers, or you can just give me the one-word answer. It'll be pretty quick and pretty fun. So the first,
All right.
Okay, ready? All right. The first one, Dodge or Plymouth?
Plymouth.
All right. 426 Hemi or Elephant?
I'll say 426 Hemi.
I gotta go with 426.
Nice. Okay. Here's a good one. Hurst Hemi Dart or Hurst Hemi Barracuda?
Barracuda.
I'll say Dart.
Absolutely Barracuda all the way.
Love it. Now this one is a little controversial because there's so many different opinions. 6.1 Hemi or 6.4 Hemi?
Oh, I'll have to go Apache 6.4 all day.
I gotta go. I think I gotta go 6.4 because I don't have a whole lot of experience with the 6.1.
Okay. I've heard rumors that the 6.4 doesn't handle boost very well. Now I don't know how true that is because I'm not as experienced as a lot of those guys involved with that. But I've seen these 6.1 Hemis get crazy amount of power, and some of these, like for example, the WK1 Grand Cherokee SRT8s. I've seen these guys. There's a couple companies out there that have hundreds of thousands of miles on these Jeeps with stock bottom ends, putting out, 4-digit wheel horsepower, which is insane to me. And I've heard through the grapevine that 6.4s don't handle the crazy amount of boost like that as easily. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you guys heard that?
No, it's actually true. The cast aspect of the pistons and the powdered rods are really the biggest enemy. But if you go with a good H-beam rod and a forged piston and a 6.4, and especially if it's a BGE block, it's in some cases as good as Hellcat stuff. But the good part for all of us is that the market's continuing to make a lot of aftermarket choices, so that we'll have 13 million Hemis to start working from, and I think that's the part we need to rejoice in, is that we've got quantity. So.
Absolutely, I agree with you 100%. Okay, next one: modern Challenger or modern Charger?
Modern Charger.
Oh yeah.
And I like the modern Charger because I like the idea of the 4 doors and still having a ton of power. It's been a cool idea to me ever since they came out. I thought it was so awesome.
I'd have to go Challenger only because I feel like we're still celebrating the e-body design by supporting that car. But given that I've got so many children, I actually should be choosing the 4-door.
I'm kind of torn. At first, when the Charger first came out, of course, I was like, 4-door? What are we doing here? Then the Challenger followed, and I was like, okay, well, that fills my need for the 2-door. And I love them both. I think that the designs have just gotten better with time. I think they're doing a great job. And I'm actually scared. I'm scared when they decide to, go outside the box a little bit. I don't know when that's going to be. I heard in 2021 or 2 or 3, something like that. They're going to redesign the car. That's scary to me, but hopefully they don't change it too much. But, I've been saying it since the start of this podcast. I want to see a new CUDA. But, with the Challenger, I've always thought, maybe you guys can give me your opinion on this, if they came out with a new CUDA, I would want to see something completely different than the Challenger. And I wouldn't mind. I've thought that something similar to the 67 to 69 Barracuda, something a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact, especially with these power plants that they're talking about, the turbocharged 4 cylinders and the 6 cylinders and things like that. I think there's a lot of room to work there. If you had the option of, you can get kind of like with the new Challengers and stuff, you can get a V6 or you can get all the way up to, a 6.4 Hemi or a 6.2 supercharged Hellcat engine. So I would like to see a car that speaks to more than just the muscle heads, because I know that there's a market out there that just, for some reason, I don't think that Mopar has gotten to yet, as far as the tuner market goes. And I think that the Barracuda or the CUDA would be a pretty good foot in the door for that. Now, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I like that idea. I think too, in the absence of the Viper, that they would have an opportunity to be able to fill where that hole in the market exists today. Because I would agree with you wholeheartedly. The Challenger and in many cases the Charger very, very much feel like muscle cars. In fact, they're labeled as such, but they don't necessarily have a sports car, and they've got the power plants to make it work. So I'd say go after it and make something unique. I'd have to agree with you. I don't know how you feel.
I definitely say one thing I think would be really nice to see too is the fact that they could go with an entirely different platform instead of the traditional fastback look that both cars have, with the Challenger and the Charger. They could go for something a little different from a side profile perspective or from the front end or even the rear, and just kind of not necessarily go away from the brand look, but alter it a little bit, because they do have the Viper, like he said. They really could change it up a bit if they think it would make sense. Yeah.
I agree 100%. I'm sick of people going, "Oh, look at the fat kids. Look at the fat kids." I'm like, okay, all right, okay, ha.
The LCLX chassis are not like cars by any means.
That's why I think they could just shut the game down and just bring out a modern CUDA that kind of, not only has I just want choices. I want to go, okay, I want a turbocharged 4-cylinder, see where I can go with that. Or, let's throw a big V8 in it. I like the idea of having something that can handle like crazy and still have that muscle, but more like what Chuck said, along the lines of more sports car feel. I like the idea of that. So
the ACR CUDA could be a new model you've just invented.
Ooh. All right, Chuck, we're gonna have to go write a letter to Mr. Mopar.
Sounds good.
Okay, last one. Hemi CUDA. Now this is referring to the vintage Hemi CUDAs, because there are no modern Hemi CUDAs, obviously. Or SRT Demon.
I'd have to go SRT Demon.
I'd say that I've always loved e-bodies. It's been a dream car of mine. I gotta go with the 426 CUDA. I mean, that's. It's funny how we're.
I'm glad that you both came on, because that has brought an interesting dynamic to this conversation, and I love it. Yeah, as far as that one goes, as crazy. I actually saw a B5 Blue Demon on Friday on my way home from work, and
wow,
I was actually coming out of a parking lot, and I saw it going the opposite direction, and I was like, and I almost wanted to just chase him down, but I'm obviously not going to catch him. So, there's something. It's weird with those modern cars. You'll see, even scat packs or regular RTs all day long. But when you see a Demon, and there's quite a few Hellcats around locally, but when you see a Demon, there's just something about that car, man. I love that car, but I'm also a vintage guy. So I would have to go Hemi Cuda just because there's,
right.
I could always get a Demon down the line, you know what I mean? But
Sure.
the Hemi Cuda, it's like, okay, well, that's kind of like the unicorn, so I'm gonna have to stay vintage. Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about while I got you on the horn, or you want to shut this show down?
No, I'd say we really appreciate the airtime, and we look forward to listening to more of Talking Mopars, because I think the format that you've got and the reach that you've got has really, I think, enthused a lot of us to be able to have something else to be a part of. If you think of what Motor Trend's done with video and, for the most part, television shows, they've definitely brought us some content, but you can't watch roadkill when you're on an 8-hour drive to the track. But with Talking Mopars, you've got a format that I think people can really be entertained by and get caught up on when they've got ears only. So I'm looking forward to hearing more of it.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Chuck, one last time, why don't you guys tell everybody where they can find Hemi pages and Ready Chassis and everything that you're involved with?
Sounds good. Well, I'll let you do Hemi pages. So Ready Chassis is ReadyChassis.com, and the online store is ReadyChassis.shop. And then we'll also have a paper catalog that we'll be able to mail out. And of course, you can follow us on social media.
And then we've got Hemi pages at HemiPages.com. And then you can call us at our phone number, which is 833-GOT-HEMI.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for coming on the first edition of Direct Connections. It was a pleasure having you. And I hope this isn't the only time that I get you on. Once Hemi Pages is launched and Ready Chassis gets rolling, I want to have you guys back on, and let's talk some more shop. All right?
That sounds great, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure having you guys on, and that was Direct Connections. That does it for us here on Talking Mopars. Thanks for joining me for the first edition of Direct Connections. For more information about the show, please visit TalkingMopars.com. Please rate and review it. And if you want to send in your Mopar story, or if you just want to reach out to me for whatever, you can reach me, Chris, at TalkingMopars.com, or you can leave me a voicemail, 209-28-MOPAR. And in case you already forgot, visit ReadyChassis.com and HemiPages.com to see what my friends Chuck and Matt are up to. Thanks for listening, folks. We'll see you again next week. I'm your host, Chris Albrecht, and that was Talking Mopars, Direct Connections.
Thank you for listening to Talking Mopars, your direct connection to all things Mopar. Until next time, remember, no Mopar left behind.